My name is Carly Stevens, and you are listening to the History of the Future. In today's Futurist Slidecast, we will be learning about the controversial Ivan Illich, whose final thesis, The Corruption of the Best is the Worst, argued that contemporary society is the outcome of a betrayal of Christian faith. Ivan Illich was a man far beyond his time. As a critic of modern society, Illich infamously saw through the systematic paradigms that shape the way we think, behave, and interact with each other. As illustrated by the parable of the Good Samaritan, his corruption thesis begins with the incarnation, the enfleshment of God that brings forth a new possibility to freely choose to love another in the flesh, turning the interpersonal relationship into a medium of morality. Constructed as charity, the Church's attempt to institutionalize this relatedness turned it into social obligation and created a culture of need satisfaction. Suddenly, these institutions become a set of contradictory systems that end up hindering the very thing they promise. Throughout his life, Illich published numerous works critiquing the institutionalization of charity and its descendants. While he considered himself a philosopher, theologian, and historian, Ivan Illich was also, indeed, a futurist. But how? Well, in order to answer that, we first have to look at his background and historical context. Born in Vienna in 1926, Illich's intelligence and reverence for the Church made him tailor-made for a life of priesthood. After studying crystallography, histology, theology, philosophy, and medieval history, and developing a repertoire of over 10 languages, Illich left for New York City in 1951 and was introduced to the new Puerto Rican immigrants whose experiences were fostered by systematic inequality. He signed up to be a parish priest, where he first discovered the unsettling nature of the compulsory education system and the Christian institution's deep roots in American education and politics. In 1961, President Kennedy introduced the Alliance for Progress, whose underlying purpose was to use development to cure the underdevelopment and living conditions of Latin America, a goal that Illich foresaw to be inherently problematic. His efforts went into convincing the Church to disentangle itself from such initiatives. In response, he established the Center for Intercultural Documentation in Mexico, which emulated what he determined an education institution should be. It was created with the intention of teaching young missionaries and development workers how to appropriately bring Christian education to Latin America through properly conducted language learning. Illich was extremely devout but indeed critical on church policy. Throughout the 60s, he strongly advocated for the renunciation of power of the Church, which he believed had no place to be guiding ideology, providing services, or exercising social control. For this, Illich faced a considerable amount of backlash. Labeled an object of curiosity, bewilderment, and scandal to the Church, he was called to answer questions about his religious and political views, and was eventually asked to revoke his clerical duties. He then left the Center for Intercultural Documentation in 1969 and traveled the world throughout the 70s. During this time of social and political upheaval, he wrote extensively on modern social institutions including the health, educational, political, religious, transportation, and technological systems. He discussed their failure and how to address the underlying ideological issues that were perpetuating poverty, inequality, and a sense of disembodiment. Illich is a futurist precisely because of his profound ability to see through the systems of a ritualistic modernity and his visions on how to revive morality and Christian vocation. In terms of technology, working parts that interact and are interrelated form systems of functionality. In conceptualizing the future, these systems become rigid paradigms that shape ontological visions for innovation. Though often overlooked, the role that social and political systems play in shaping the future is just as fundamental as technological ones. They're irreconcilable. This is a theme that Illich frequently revisits in his commentary on modern progress. However, these paradigms are problematic because they are so immutable that dissension becomes extremely rare and often taboo. Illich's capacity for tenaciously poking holes in society's deeply entrenched paradigms and illuminating their flaws is exactly what made him a futurist. He hoped to show others these views, but they were not always well received. He strived to generate political discussion and show the world that modern social institutions are reaching a point of paradoxical counterproductivity, where the education systems produce dropouts instead of equal opportunity, the health systems create as many illnesses as they cure, and technological systems transcend unique human ability. Contrary to traditional definitions of the term, Illich's innovations were that of deconstruction, deprofessionalization, and disestablishment. He argues that historical and contemporary futurists have overvalued technological growth and its economic viability while neglecting the inevitable social consequences. According to Illich, the relatedness made possible by the incarnation is corrupted when social service is commodified and universalized. It creates a culture of consumption and need satisfaction that serves the industry rather than the individual and community, and takes away from our intimate, worldly lived experiences. Breaking through paradigms, Illich predicted that society was progressing towards increased inequality and loss of control. In the end, this institutionalization is what leads us to bomb on neighbors because it's for their own good, to hook stroke victims up to a machine to prolong their insufferable life, and to deny opportunity to students who fail to get an A. Illich suggests that a dependable future is one of conviviality, that is, living based on action rather than consumption and development. The Center for Intercultural Documentation wishes one example of a convivial institution. By recognizing the limits of the social and natural world and acting within them accordingly, we can move towards a culture of community, relatedness, and personal growth. His resolution was to behave convivially in service for society, disestablish a universal set of morality and rules, and live with a sense of gratuity. He calls to recognize and accept this world we live in, to remember who we are in the here and now, and always ask, what can I do in this moment?